If you have sleep apnea and struggle with CPAP, consider that CPAPs were invented in 1980. Do you even remember 1980? Everyone's house had one telephone. There were like 4 TV channels.
Come on.
You played video games in arcades and watched movies in theaters. GPS was a folded map and a helpful gas station attendant. And social media was inviting the neighbors to come look at your vacation pictures. A lot has changed since 1980. Now, for people who struggle with CPAP, there's Inspire. Inspire is an implanted device that treats sleep apnea inside your body at the click of a remote. It's the only FDA-approved sleep apnea treatment of its kind. While you sleep, Inspire keeps you breathing normally and resting comfortably. No mask, no hose, just sleep. To learn more, visit inspiresleep.com. Inspire, sleep apnea innovation. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
And good evening. This is Mottek on Money, number one for your business and consumer news here on 790 KBC. Good evening. This is Frank Mottek. We're doing it live right here worldwide at KBC.com, on the air on 790 KBC, and the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast at KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms on this September 11, 2023, 22 years after the 9/11 terror attacks on the United States. We honor all the Patriots lost on this date. It looks like in Beverly Hills they're about to begin a solemn remembrance at the Beverly Hills 9/11 Memorial Garden. Earlier there was a big ceremony in downtown Los Angeles, and Pepperdine University has a magnificent display of American flags as well as other flags for those lost on the terror attacks on September 11th, 2001. They're displaying nearly 3,000 flags along the Pacific Coast Highway and Malibu Canyon Road, and that display will continue until September 21st. The stock market starting the week mostly higher today. We did get some movement today on a number of things. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 87 points, the S&P 500 of 30, and the NASDAQ moved up 156. Looks like the market got a boost by producers of luxury goods and services, including Tesla, which was leading the winners list today with a gain of about 10%. Investors are awaiting the latest reading on inflation. That will be coming out later this week. Retail sales reports also coming out later this week. That will be watched by the Federal Reserve and the Fed policymakers looking to possibly raise interest rates again. We see Tesla up, 10% after Morgan Stanley upgraded the EV giant stock to overweight from equal weight while raising the price target to a Wall Street high of $400 per share from $250. Taking a look at what's happening with the price of oil, that kissed a new high for the year but settled slightly lower today. We see the price of oil right now above $90 a barrel in London and around 87 and change in New York. Qualcomm moving up about 4% today after Apple extended a deal to get modem semiconductors from the chip maker for at least 3 more years. Apple stock up nearly 1%. Tomorrow's Apple's big day with a big product announcement. The new iPhone is expected to be rolled out. And the big deal today, Walt Disney Company stock ending 1.2% higher after CNBC reported that its fight between cable giant Charter Communications and Disney came to an end. The two companies reportedly reached a deal to restore popular channels such as ESPN to the cable operator's nearly 15 million subscribers. Charter Class A shares closed up by 3.2%. And the week started with a big merger deal involving Twinkies, among other things, shares of Hostess Brands. The stock symbol on this one, by the way, is TWNK for Twink, up about 19% after the Twinkies and Ho-Ho's maker announced a deal to be acquired by J.M. Smucker in a cash and stock deal valued at $5.6 billion. With a name like Smucker, you know this deal's got to be good, right? So that's what they would say on their advertising. Now, American depository receipts of Alibaba Group, the Chinese giant, closing down 1.5% today after the e-commerce company sent in a surprise announcement over the weekend that the outgoing CEO will also be stepping down as chairman and chief executive at its cloud business unit. On the tax front, we're watching what's happening very closely, and maybe another government shutdown, by the way, at the end of this month. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence is reportedly being deployed now by the IRS to catch income tax evasion. We'll get the reaction tonight from leading taxpayer advocate Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. And the latest smash and grab caught on video, getting lots of attention today, happened at the Macy's store in Northridge over the weekend. A group of thieves armed with hammers targeted and swarmed the store at about 11 o'clock on Sunday morning at the Macy's in Northridge at the Northridge Fashion Center. Police say at least 10 men dressed in dark clothing were involved in the attack and theft. I'll discuss what's happening with the Honorable Dennis Zine tonight, former L.A. City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, and current reserve officer with about 55 years of service to the City of Angels. But first, on your money, the markets, and the economy. Joining us live now, Ken Winans, money manager and president of Winans Investments, market historian, Forbes magazine contributor, and author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Ken Winans, we were on the air back on September 11th, 2001, and as a market historian, we saw that incredible event and the resiliency that the market had and that the country had and the patriotism that everyone had in those days. What are your thoughts on this important day here, first of all?
Frank, it's interesting. I go back and think about that day, and you are right. You and I have known each other a long time, and we had a broadcast back then. And it was actually the beginning of my decision that a history book had to be written on financial history, because I distinctly remember, for those of you who might not have remembered this, the stock market literally shut down for 5 days. There was real doubt it was actually even going to be able to reopen because of the damage done. At that time, we were very dependent on places like the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange physically being in a location. But I do distinctly remember telling people that this is a bit like the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941. This country's going to war, and the markets will go up on it. And the famous phrase I kept hearing then was, it's different this time. It's going to be very different. And there were an awful lot of people, as there were during the COVID 2020 panic, that sold at the bottom and never got back in. And I think it's just, again, you've got to be careful to not forget the history. What I can also tell you, it is, as we've talked, you spent a great deal of the discussion before I came on talking about inflation. It is my opinion that the very, very beginning of this inflationary cycle started because of that attack in 2001. Because of that, our government went to war, and trillions and trillions of dollars were spent on a very long, protracted war. And when you spend that kind of money, as this whole century has been about spending money, that breeds inflation, and is where we are today.
On the air live with money manager Ken Winans. Ken, thank you for that, and we appreciate your thorough knowledge of history as well as of the markets and the economy. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on this important occasion here today. And looking back here, that was quite a rebound there. You brought back a lot of memories. I actually was on the top of the World Trade Center on Labor Day of 2001, just about 7 or 8 days before the towers came down. So it was unbelievable to have that experience and see what happened here. I was in Los Angeles when the attacks occurred, and to see all of downtown Los Angeles shut down at that time, and everything was being evacuated, and of course all the airspace was shut down. So it's a day certainly none of us will ever forget, and it's wonderful to see these very solemn and important commemorations going on here as we speak. So Ken, give us your assessment of things here at the moment with the market up, went down 3 days in a row here. Tesla back in the spotlight, and the Fed and inflation very much in focus this week. So give us your assessment of things here at this moment.
Well, also, and Frank, keep in mind, we are in that horrible month of September. For those of us who are stock investors, we generally like to just breathe a sigh of relief when we get to October 1st, because you usually clear a lot. There was news today, and it's no big surprise, although the pressures are backing off of inflation, although I think any of us who have bought gasoline lately probably would have a tough time believing that. But the reality of it is that, yes, it's not going to go higher, but inflation is a very, very stubborn animal to conquer. And for the Federal Reserve, they've got a tough decision to make. They can really just steadfastly say, we're going to get this out of the system, which, by the way, you don't want inflation in an economic system. Ask people who come from Central and South America what it is like to be in a protracted inflationary environment. It's a horrible economic scenario. But at the same time, if you keep it too far too long, and many times in history, we've seen the Fed, as we would say, overshoot by keeping rates too high for too long, then you do have softening the economy. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, as you mentioned, retail sales coming out. Where are we on consumer spending? We are going to start the cycle soon on political campaigning. We're going to hear a lot more about that. But again, inflation is going to be with us for many, many years to come. It's going to be a common theme in your broadcast. and we all have to learn to deal with it. Frank, I was going to bring up, that, again, inflation is a regional thing. And when I talk to people who are in other parts of the country, they don't have a lot of the issues that we have here because as you think of our gas prices, again, I think it's just this is the canary in the coal mine. Yes, gas in California is expensive, but, crude oil prices are the same for everybody around the world. So an awful lot of that price at the pump are taxes. And we are paying a much higher level of taxation in this state than in other states. And when you have that, that also breeds higher inflation, in my opinion.
Certainly, the price of gas and oil going up, not down, and that's obviously also, as we've seen in the past, impacts consumer confidence. In fact, oil touching a new high for the year before pulling back only slightly. What's the outlook on where that goes from here, Ken, and obviously its impact on inflation and consumers?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the good news is that we actually did get through the tourist drivers' summer season without a huge spike in oil prices, which many people, including myself, thought was going to occur. But the refineries and the distribution companies kept, the oil plentiful, so that kept prices down. The bigger thing I think we're going to be looking at, though, is, and I know many people who, whether you like it or not, we do still power our houses with natural gas. And I do think we're going to find natural gas prices spiking quite a bit through the fall and the winter, only because, from what I understand, supplies are rather low. And there's been new regulatory restrictions placed on distribution. So you have to pick your poison. So I think we're going to switch from worrying about crude oil to worrying about natural gas as we go into the fall. But Frank, it is still a very, very strange market. And I want to bring this up. Many people are just surprised when, they look at the S&P 500 and say, wow, the market's up 12% on the year. And I say, well, have you looked at the Dow lately? It's up 4%. You look at the Russell 2000, it's up 3%. You look at the S&P 400 mid-cap, which those mid-cap stocks have usually been the real drivers in our economy. That index, I think, is up 5%. This has been not a broad-based, powerful rally. It is very much a mixed bag. And I think we'll probably end the year on that note. But again, a lot of people are trying to chase. And you mentioned Tesla having a bounce. Just good case in point. Many of the tech stocks are still nowhere near their highs of 2022. They're not even close. So remember, this market could trade in a very wide band for a very long time with a lot of volatility. We need to rethink our thinking.
On there live with Ken Whitens and Apple with its big announcement tomorrow. We see Apple stock, let's see, did it move a little bit higher today? Yeah, up $1.18 to $179 and change. Ken, this is one of the so-called Magnificent Seven, which have had a big year and have driven the most of the market action higher, right? So what about Apple here?
Well, it's funny. I went down. Actually, I learned something rather interesting when I went to my AT&T store this weekend because I kept wondering why my phone was acting so funny. And I was basically informed that Apple, basically they're forcing everybody to do upgrades. And we can argue about the legality or ethics of that, but that is their game plan. So anybody who's still on an older phone, you're going to be, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to go and buy a very expensive phone. And so it will be interesting to see if that strategy, as we used to call in economics, planned obsolescence, if that's going to drive demand for the new iPhones. I will tell you one thing, though. There's still an absolute slaughtering in the semiconductor space in the market right now. And it goes back to the reports earlier, well, it's going to be late last week, when China basically said that the Chinese officials can no longer use iPhones. Those semiconductor stocks all got massacred. And so, again, very volatile market. You got to be very careful what you buy. But I would encourage everybody to remember this as well, Frank. We are going into the fall. And if you look at it historically, from October through May is the time when stock investors, even in bear markets, typically do very, very well. So I would encourage everybody to get your list of ETFs and individual stocks picked. And on any kind of a dip, definitely step in and start buying a few things, because I do think you'll get some kind of a nice rally as we go into the end of the year.
On there live with Money Manager Ken Winans, I heard something said over the weekend. Somebody asked me, how do you milk sheep? And the answer was, you sell iPhones for $1,500. That was the answer. So let me ask you this. We had this big news on Disney and Charter Communications, a deal to end this 11-day long channel blackout that kept nearly 15 million Spectrum cable subscribers without college football, the U.S. Open, Good Morning America, Dancing with the Stars, just in time for Monday Night Football. We got the hot labor summer, and this was a big deal, of course, in the media realm today. Ken, what about the media stocks here in this whole situation with the hot labor summer continuing?
Well, it's a story. It's a battle of attrition and how long people can wait before they have to start normalizing things. And we know that. And by the way, strikes in Hollywood. There's a history of this. Many strikes going on for protracted periods of time. And I do think that this might be the beginning of the end of this, with groups finally saying, "Look, let's just negotiate. Let's come up with something that's meaningful and accept that the media world has changed, especially with streaming." So I think you're going to continue to find that. But in that being said, Frank, I think that there's also a lot of people who are turning to what I will call more conventional type of communication or mediums, and certainly media mediums, excuse the pun. And I know, for instance, many people have found, hey, I still have Dish TV. It works. I don't have blackouts. There's a lot of people who are beginning to question maybe it's too soon to cut the cable, especially for older people. So it's not a bad thing that we're finding more conventional means or mediums are finally coming to the table and fixing this. At the same time, I will tell you that you hate to say making money on a strike, and I don't like to be viewed that way, but there have been some golden opportunities for investors to step in with the eye that the strike is going to end, and I've talked about them several times in your broadcast. But I would still encourage people to look for those opportunities.
All right. And cybersecurity is still a big issue. We're reminded of that. Cybersecurity issue led to the shutdown of some casino and hotel computer systems at MGM Resorts International in Vegas. And looks like not only there, but across the U.S. The incident began over the weekend and affected reservation systems and even casino floors. I know you have a Vegas connection. Ken, any updates on what's happening there? And what about cybersecurity?
Well, during COVID, a lot of people were lax on getting things updated, mainly because we weren't in the office very much. And you do find that a lot of the IT-related maintenance that would have been done to systems simply hadn't been done. And even to this day, even though COVID we can argue we're already a year and a half out of the quarantining situation. But again, they're still playing catch-up. So unfortunately, this is going to continue. And small businesses, large businesses, we all have to worry about it. We're mandated by law to try to protect our systems. But I think it's going to be a common tale, Frank. And, if you go back and remember 9/11, we were very concerned then about cyber attacks. This is an ongoing thing. The players just change, but the threat is still the same.
All right. Before I let you off the hook here, Ken, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, I have to tell you, you talked earlier. Many times I talk about commodities, but as goes oil, so do go a lot of commodities, and particularly agriculture. I've been astounded when I watch, and by the way, you don't have to be a commodity futures trader. You can buy the exchange-traded funds that trade these. You can buy, anybody can buy them. And particularly what's catching my eye right now is sugar and soybeans. They are on a tear. And in fact, I brought up a couple of times, sugar has actually outperformed the NASDAQ this year, but it had a slight pullback. And I think it's going to continue just because there's a global shortage. The one cautionary tale in the commodity world, I have been concerned that gold and silver have both been weakening a great deal. And that's partly because the dollar has been phenomenally strong, which goes against what most people would say. But I would say right now, gold bugs need to be somewhat cautious about doubling down until we really see if this rally in the dollar is here to stay. But, Frank, anything in the commodity sector, you're in that time of season when you can make money at it. I would encourage people to consider adding that to their portfolio.
Ken, thank you very much for taking the call tonight. That is Money Manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, Forbes magazine contributor, and his books include Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Ken Winans, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much, Ken, for taking the call live with us here tonight.
My pleasure, Frank. Take care.
Thank you very much. And right out to the freeways we go now on 790 KBC. Friends, are you looking for legal help you can trust? Look no further than attorney Clark Fielding and the Fielding Law Team, your go-to destination for top-notch personal injury legal representation. Fielding Law understands that life can take unexpected turns, and you need a strong legal team to stand by your side. Now, if you've been hurt in an accident that was not your fault and need help with a personal injury claim to obtain justice, Fielding Law is here to fight for you. Accidents happen, but you don't have to face the aftermath alone. Fielding Law's experienced attorneys are here to guide you through the legal process and ensure you get the compensation you deserve. Medical bills piling up, lost wages due to injury? Don't worry. Fielding Law specializes in personal injury cases and works tirelessly to recover your losses so you can focus on healing. The Fielding Law Team has a proven record of success. They've helped countless clients secure fair settlements and win in court. You can trust Fielding Law to provide you with the best legal representation possible. And if Fielding Law takes your case, Clark and his team of sharks will personally work with you, fighting hard for you to receive the compensation the law allows. Call Fielding Law for a free case evaluation. It costs you nothing to get that honest opinion. And do what I did. Put Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. 833-88-SHARK's the number, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes the Rocky Horror Picture Show 48th Anniversary Spectacular Tour coming to the Saban Theater on October 8th. Tickets are on sale now at AXS.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222 and get a pair of tickets to the show. If you're caller 9, call right now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. No horror show on Wall Street today with the stock market moving up for the third session in a row. The Dow up 87 points today at 34,664. The S&P 500 up 30 at 4,487. And the NASDAQ gained 156 at 13,918. The yield on the 10-year note still hanging up there at 4.29% as mortgage rates continue to hover at the 20-plus year highs. In the cryptos, we see a Bitcoin up about 50 now at 25,136. Ethereum up 8 at 1,548. And Doge at 6 cents. Tesla among the winners today up 10%. CVS up 4.4%. And Qualcomm shares up 3.9%. Qualcomm stock moving up after Apple extended a deal to get modem semiconductors from the chip maker for at least another 3 more years. Apple stock up nearly 1% on the day. Tomorrow, Apple will be in the spotlight with its product announcement. They're expecting to roll out the new iPhone 15, among other things. Disney shares moving up 1.2% on the news that its fight between cable giant Charter Communications and Disney came to an end, with the two companies reaching a deal to restore popular channels, including ESPN, to the cable operator's nearly 15 million subscribers. Class A shares of Charter closed up by 3.2%. And now the latest news for you right here on 790 KBC. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. QC Kinetics can change your life. You can live again without that chronic joint pain and without drugs or surgery. It's Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics is advanced regenerative medicine. They take your body's own concentrated healing properties and put them right into your joint to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue that's causing all that horrible pain for you. The patient satisfaction reports are absolutely astonishing. Finally, a real alternative to the old ways of dealing with pain. And unlike surgery, there's no downtime with QC treatments. Now, if you have constant pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back, you need to call and get a free consultation from the medical professionals at QC Kinetics today. Imagine this autumn moving around pain-free, doing the things you love again, walking, hiking, playing with your grandkids. Call QC Kinetics and see how the latest advances in precision regenerative medicine can attack your pain and bring you lasting relief. QC Kinetics, locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, and now also in Costa Mesa. Call 213-997-PAIN. 213-997-PAIN. Again, that's 213-997-PAIN. Mottek on Money continues here on 790 KBC. Artificial intelligence, no conversation these days would be complete without it. So let's talk about AI. It's now reportedly being deployed by the IRS in hopes of catching income tax evasion. Let's get reaction now from the leading taxpayer advocate out there, Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Looks like we have AI preparing the taxes and now AI looking for tax cheats, according to this one big report today. Grover, what's the latest here on AI and taxes?
Well, the IRS had called a bunch of press people, about 7, and gave them the scoop. We're going to audit all of these companies' partnerships and so on, because we think we can find a bunch of money there. And since artificial intelligence or AI is sort of the magic word. They said, and we're going to use AI to do it. And this is what we're spending, the $80 billion. Well, it's not $80 billion anymore. Remember, they wanted $80 billion. The Republicans were able in the last negotiation to take 22 of that away. So just under $60 billion is what they hope to get over a decade. And they said, and that's what we're spending all that money on. We're just going to go after a handful of, several thousand really rich people, partnerships. Well, as a matter of fact, that's a nice talking point, but there's nothing to it. They are going to go after anyone they want, and by there's nothing that in the law that requires them to only go after big partnerships or rich people or rich corporations or whatever, which is what they told everybody. The power they took was the ability to hire anybody they wanted to do anything they wanted, with no reforms coming out of the scandals. In almost every decade, there's been a scandal on the IRS's misbehavior and being completely unsecure in terms of protecting taxpayers' privacy. So they're going to get a bunch of information, and who knows where it's going to go, because they have a very bad habit of leaking it for political purposes.
On their live with Grover Norquist, America's leading taxpayer advocate, are they going to make it official someday, Grover? The unofficial slogan for the IRS is, they've got what it takes to take what you've got.
Well, they are. And here's what they've done with this AI non-story. I mean, why are they doing this? They want to convince you that all of this money is not going after you. Although in their own write-ups, they said they want to go after independent contractors. There aren't any rich independent contractors. And they're going after people who have a side job, a second job, sell something on eBay. That's where they think they're going to get their money, is small, independent businesses, self-employed people. That's what they've said they were going to do in their own internal writings. Then when they wanted $80 billion, they could hardly keep telling people that story as to who they intended to go after. That would be embarrassing to Biden. So they did what Biden, Biden said he'd only increase taxes on people who made more than $400,000, which isn't true. His tax increases hit many people who are low income because they're on energy. Surprise, surprise. But by saying we're going to use AI, what does that mean? That means don't ask us why you're auditing you, mister. It's through AI. It's science. Kind of like Fauci always did. Hey, this is science. Leave me alone. Just do what I tell you to. It's science. By saying AI, they think it's a magic word that it makes it sound like you were picked randomly or not for political purposes. When in point of fact, I served on the commission on restructuring the IRS, and I asked the head of the IRS during the Clinton years. I said in the commission, right? I said my right of center friends, National Rifle Association, Heritage, other groups, they're all being audited. But when I talk to my left-wing friends, they're not being audited. Why is this? Oh, we have an algorithm. We have this process we go through that's completely neutral. I said, that's very good. Show it to us. Oh, it's a secret. You'll have to trust us. Okay? AI is that same thing. They targeted groups that Clinton didn't like, and they said, oh, it's picked randomly by a process, which is a secret. That's what AI will be. AI will be the new process for auditing people they don't like, and they'll argue and you can't ask us what the algorithm looks like. You can't ask us how we got to that point. We'll target who we want, and we'll tell you it's randomly done.
On their live with Grover Norquist, and of course the science could be political science again, as we've seen with other situations over the recent years. Now, with the use of AI, there's also the use of virtual employees. So maybe some of those 80,000 that they want, would those actually be bots? You don't know if you're talking to a human or a machine.
It does raise questions if people aren't working out of the office, as people in the IRS tend not to. They're working at home. From home, if they're working. They're at home. They may not be working. They may be working. But yes, if everything's virtual, how do you even know the person who's talking to you works for the IRS? All
right, let me ask you this. The other headline we're seeing here, House GOP's government shutdown threat set to collide with demands for Biden impeachment. Give us an update on what's happening with the possibility of a government shutdown at the end of the month.
Well, the Republicans are trying to put together a budget and a tax policy and so on, and there are always a handful of, any 7 Republicans can stop something from happening, along with the Democrats. So they may not be able to pass something, and if they did, the Senate Democrats could refuse. And then, of course, the establishment press would announce the Republican House has passed a budget, but since the Senate didn't and the president would have vetoed it if they did, we now announce that the Republicans just closed the government down. One of the things that some Republicans do that isn't helpful is they go, we wouldn't mind a shutdown, meaning this is, very important and don't threaten us. But by constantly saying we don't mind a shutdown, that turns into we want a shutdown. And going back to Clinton's days, the Republican House and Senate passed legislation, a budget, in 1995, and Clinton vetoed it, and the press announced that the Republicans had closed down the government because they hadn't given Clinton the budget he wanted. So Republicans, because of the establishment press, always end up getting blamed for any shutdown, and they just need to be very careful both about talking about it and how to approach it. These shutdowns never last for very long. They don't really matter. It's a lot of hoopla. But at the end of the day, there is an election in Virginia that matters very much as to whether the Republicans will control the state of Virginia, state Senate. And a shutdown could damage the Republican prospects of winning that state. A Republican Virginia means the Republicans more likely to win the presidency than not, because Virginia had been blue, but it's now turning red. And a state that won the Senate, the House, and the governorship were all red for a while, they can cut taxes, they can do school choice, they can do any number of things which will make it more red longer, sooner.
Grover Norquist, thank you very much for joining us live here tonight and speaking up for our audience, the taxpayers out there. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here tonight.
Thank you.
Right out to the freeways we go now. You're on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Innovation Refunds has been helping small businesses that qualify get a business payroll tax refund through the Employee Retention Credit, also known as the ERC. The ERC is a tax refund for businesses that kept employees on payroll for parts of the year 2020 and 2021. Now, if you own a business with more than 5 employees, you could have money waiting for you. They understand the importance of your information and have industry standard certifications to back it up. Now, if your business faced challenges during the pandemic that it would not have without pandemic government orders, you may be eligible for a substantial refund. Go to innovationrefunds.com to see if you qualify. Innovation Refunds has hundreds of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, Google, and they're accredited by the BBB. There's no upfront fee. They don't get paid unless you get paid. InnovationRefunds.com, that's the website to go to, or call 1-843-REFUNDS. That's 1-843-REFUNDS. Innovation Refunds does not provide tax or legal advice. They work with an independent network of tax professionals and will share information with them to evaluate and process your claims. Terms and conditions apply. Mottek Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. The latest smash and grab caught on video and getting lots of worldwide attention happening at the Macy's store in Northridge over the weekend. Probably saw a group of thieves armed with hammers targeted and swarmed the store at about 11 a.m. on Sunday morning at the Macy's at the Northridge Fashion Center. At least 10 men dressed in dark clothing, according to police, were involved in the attack and theft. Let's bring in the Honorable Dennis Zine now, former L.A. City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer with about 55 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for taking the call here. We're speaking here on 9/11. First of all, you're a patriot. I believe, were you on the city council at the time of 9/11?
Yes, I was, Frank. I was newly elected, and I remember heading up to Northern California for a major conference. I was called back to the city, and at that time, Alex Padilla was the council president, and we mustered down at City Hall and figured out what we're going to do to save the city, because there was a possibility that this attack would happen in other parts of the country, not just what we saw and what tragically occurred. So that was quite an experience, coming from law enforcement to politics and seeing the devastation. And God bless those souls that perished in that, those brave Americans that perished, the firefighters, the New York police officers, et cetera. It's just very, very tragic, and it's hard to believe it's been so many years, and we can never forget. And we always have to remember and pray for their survivors that suffered the consequences of that tragic that senseless, tragic attack on America and those individuals.
Certainly, and there are solemn commemorations happening right now, and at that time, certainly there was a tremendous wave of patriotism, and first responders, police and firefighters were tremendously appreciated and honored. And fast forward to what's happening here now, Dennis Zine, let me ask you about this latest wave of crime we're seeing. The latest incident caught on tape, anyway, happened at the Northridge Fashion Center. And we've been, of course, on the air on all these incidents lately. Give us your reaction to this latest incident here.
Well, Frank, it's a continuation of the activity, the illegal activity, the robberies, the burglaries, the attacks on people and products, merchandise, whether it's cologne or purses. Nordstrom's been hit more than one time. Macy's has been hit more than one time. Many stores, we see some of the videos on television. And we have, sadly, a district attorney that doesn't understand his role in prosecuting people that commit these vicious crimes. It's just a matter of time until someone gets killed in one of these situations. So it continues, and what we see is a continuation, whether it's Sunday or Monday, it doesn't matter. It's daytime. They're brazen as can be. And we have a prosecutor. We have law enforcement. We got the federal government, the state government, local agencies involved in this aggressive investigation. But we have a district attorney that just really doesn't care. He doesn't care about the people, doesn't care about public safety. So it's a very futile effort, because every time we have an arrest, we have more people doing this tragedy and the viciousness of these crimes that continually happen, whether it's the perfume, we know the Gucci purchase, it doesn't seem to end. And people need to realize that public safety, police officers, deputy sheriffs, highway patrol, all want to make this a safe place. And it's difficult to make it a safe place. We've got a prosecutor who doesn't do his job in incarcerating these individuals, these animals that create this havoc in our community.
An impossible situation right now. And is it about to get worse starting next month? There are some changes in the laws we've been told that might make this revolving door even worse here.
Well, Sacramento doesn't have a focus on public safety, and we see the legislation they're going out with. They don't want to permit police officers to stop cars, mechanical violations, or, for example, lights out or tail lights out or license plate lights out or no license plate. Sacramento legislature is not much better than the district attorney of Los Angeles County. They're basically taking the hands of law enforcement and cuffing the hands of law enforcement and really prohibiting them from doing their job. I mean, every officer now in uniform in major departments carries a body cam. Where's the body cam? Everything they do is documented, and they don't want to trust the police. So the fact of the matter is we have victims after victims after victims, and when they become victimized, well, why isn't anyone there to help us? The police are there to help you. Prosecutors, the lead of the agencies, and the Sacramento, the politicians that just don't care about the victims. And that's a sad commentary to say about Sacramento politicians and about our district attorney. Not the prosecutors themselves, the deputy district attorney. I'm talking about the leader of the Los Angeles County District Attorney Association. That's the person, the one in charge. He's the one who just really doesn't care about victims and people being victimized.
That is absolutely shocking. And, of course, there was a recall effort mounted, and now there's a legal challenge, right? Give us an update on what's happening with all that.
Well, we have the legal challenge, and we found out that the County of Los Angeles, the people in charge, gave false numbers. They said there were more registered voters than there actually were. We're challenging that. That's in court, and we hope that this will proceed for the benefit of the people of Los Angeles County. There's $6 million spent on that particular campaign to oust Gascon from the district attorney's office. That's not over. We're still continuing that. And you're going to find more individuals of name recognition jumping into that campaign for District Attorney of LA County. There's a number of people now that have announced, and there's more coming out in the next few days, qualified, good, honorable people, anyone who's an attorney who knows anything about public safety and protecting people should enter that race. And there's a number of challengers that Mr. Gascon's going to be very, 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 very close to being announced.
We had that big shootout in Hollywood over the weekend, too, on Hollywood Boulevard near Ivar there, where police exchanged fire with suspects. It's unbelievable what's going on out there now.
Well, the brazen attacks on law enforcement, shooting police officers, we've had that happen more than one time. We've seen cases where they're just shooting at police officers, not that the officer stopping them or interrogating them. They just have this attitude, we can go shoot police officers. And sadly, these people continue to trend. Fortunately, the officers are surviving. We had a situation where the officers were ambushed. They were able to return fire and neutralize the individual. But the people need to understand, these officers were dedicated to elections to protect and serve. We've got 3 council members on the side that aren't in support of the police. They want to defund the police. So you have officers trying to combat the situation, and you've got people in elective office that really don't care. But who cares for the victim? Once you become a victim, then you'll really care, and you'll maybe had a different attitude change. But I feel for the victims. I've been seeing them for 55 years, and I feel for them. We need to have a system that works for the victims and lock up the people who are committing the crimes and take care of the victims and their families.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, former Los Angeles City Council member, longtime LAPD sergeant and current reserve officer with about 55 years of service to the City of Angels. We salute your long service here, Dennis, and your commitment to Los Angeles. And again, we renew our expression of gratitude and appreciation for all the first responders here on this 9/11. Thank you very much for joining us live here tonight.
Thank you. And God bless America.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KABC. I'll be back again tomorrow evening in the 5 o'clock hour. You can also bring up the Mottek on Money podcast on demand at KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KABC.
Afford Anything talks about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to refine your mental models, and how to think about how to think.
If people are bringing a lot of hours to their work, there can often be a multitude of reasons for that. One might be that you over-identify with your work, which is internal, right? One might be that your bosses have a heavy expectations of you, and that's external. Another one, which is also external, might simply be that you need the money.
Afford Anything, wherever you listen.